even after a law being passed years ago dedicated to the premise of increasing minority ownership for black men. Guess which group falls dead last when it comes to receiving federal grants for small businesses? And this is going to tick off a lot of people, but the very law that was created to equalize and promote black-owned businesses, particularly from black men, had been circumvented. We're going to go down the reasons why that is and what we can try to do about it right here, right now on the Ujamaa Network. One of the hardest hurdles that I ever went through when I was starting this SBA journey, trying to get a small business grant or loan, was the realization that I could not do it on my own. This is no slam or diss to any other group, but when it comes to a minority business grant, you're just not going to get it unless you are partnered with a black female as a black man. This is a hard, nasty truth that you're going to have to absorb and process in your own way. I personally went down to the Small Business Administration office some 10 years ago when I started this process. At the time, still dealing with the aftermath of a divorce, even years before that, registering my business some 13 years ago. Began that process then, talked to a representative from the retired persons branch of the SBA. And what I was hit with this fact is that as long as I own the company, the majority of that company, 51% of that ownership, has to be with a black woman. And I was like, well, why is that? That person doesn't know anything about the computers that I'm trying to put together, the labs, or anything that I'm trying to do as a business. She doesn't have a business background. I do. Why would that be important? It was to fill that DEI quota. See, it checks off two boxes. A woman is black, my wife, and a woman, a black woman. That checks off two boxes. Now, it may sound kind of crazy from our perspective, but as far as the grant process is concerned, it is a way to equalize what some historic wrongs have been done, particularly to black women. What that means is it costs black men leadership of their own companies. 51%. That will improve your odds of getting that grant. And it was not just that, and the attacks on DEI, which is why, by the way, black women took such a much harder hit when it came to business grants being granted or rejected and losing their businesses because of the current administration's attack on DEI. Why? Because they were the biggest recipients of those small business owned grants and loans from the Small Business Administration, particularly the Minority Business Administration. 51% of all of those companies, each one of those companies, were headed by black women. No matter if it's a partnership with their husbands, boyfriends, significant others, whatever. If you had a black man in that company, he did not own all of the company. Matter of fact, he did not have controlling interest in that company. So when these DEI hits hit, black women are overrepresented in their businesses that are being directly affected by it. This was not an accident. This administration knew exactly where to hit small business creation in the African American community. Go after the ones who are getting approved for those grants. And that was just that year. As a result, we're still finding our ways out of this problem that we're in. Now, for black men, particularly like myself, it didn't hit as hard. Why? We weren't getting the grants in the first place. Not on our own, at least. So it leads us to do what we've always done, and that is save the money. And over those 10 years of trying and documented registrations with SAM.gov and the SBA on record, Never got those grants. There was a period of time, maybe about 2 or 3 of those years, my credit took a really nasty hit, wasn't even going to apply. But soon as my credit hit that 680 or above, that's when I started putting these applications out. And you can apply for grants, but you're not guaranteed to get them. And here are some of the reasons given as to why you, as a black man by yourself, cannot and will not receive a grant. First, let's talk about how big the drop was in funding for minority-owned businesses. It's 33%. And this is from the time period from September 2024 to presently. 33% of minority business contracts, grants, loans were just flat out eliminated with the passage of the DOGE Commission and those DEI cuts. Now, it's interesting to note that the main challenge to those minority business-owned grants were not from businesses. This was from a conservative legal group that successfully blocked all of that from ever happening and never, ever being allowed to proceed in the future. Particularly, we're talking about the Fearless Fund, and their main proponent or opponent was the American Alliance for Equal Rights. This was a conservative group that argued that race-specific grants were just not constitutional, and they won. Now, why is this significant? Well, the Fearless Fund was a venture capitalist firm of successful black women who used their funds to attempt to equalize on their own by granting $20,000 grants to black women specifically. 20,000 grants, what is called the Strivers Reward. And the Strivers Reward, the Strivers grant was one of those grants that was specifically geared towards black women. As a result of the injunction and the actual termination of that grant in September 2024, the Fearless Fund did not have to pay any legal fines or fees to the alliance, thankfully. But what it did was completely destroy the vehicle that was providing capital to an underserved community. Now, this is strategic. This is Machiavellian. What this said is that even a successful black woman cannot even give money to another black woman. All because of a legal challenge, the same type of legal challenge that was used in college admissions of the Supreme Court when the Asian American community decided, hey, we want to go ahead and eliminate this racial quota in college admissions. As a result, Asian Americans are now looking at their decision and seeing that the same tactic that was applied here with the DEI small business grants applied to them as well. This was Machiavellian, as I said. It was a way to hit the African American community legally through the court, right where it hurts in our business creation sector. This is terrible. This was terrible. And as a result of after that, remember, by September 2024, the grants were drying up. February of 2025, with the Target boycott going on because of their DEI cuts, 400,000 black women specifically lost their jobs in government and human resources, all of that. So you had no grant money coming in, cuts to the Small Business Administration, specifically the Minority Development Branch. Then you had the unemployment rate. Now, why this didn't affect black men as much? The grant itself, this particular grant, was geared strictly towards black women. Black men didn't even get to apply to it. So for a black man, It didn't have that much of a punch, but this was a direct attack on black women and their overwhelming support for Kamala Harris. This was political retribution at its finest. And we are all paying the penalty or paying the price for just our defiance of what we knew was going to happen with Project 2025. Only thing is that this is having a substantially larger effect because those systems were demolished. Not only are black women not able to get any grants or loans, black men have continued their struggle. And we have already not been receiving those grants. So it's just more of the same. And that was just the legal challenges of what was going on. Now, in addition to the legal challenges set forth by the Alliance, there was also an injunction placed on the Minority Business Development Agency, which is part of the SBA. And it's the way that this attack was played out. Race was used as a catalyst for the basis of this suit, that you could not use race as a qualifier or disqualifier in any grant distribution. What's interesting is the Machiavellian way in which they did it. They used the Civil Rights Title VI, it was Title VI, as a catalyst to win those injunctions. In other words, the very title, Civil Rights Act, that is currently being used and attacked by the Alliance, and whether or not you can use race as a determining factor to prevent garbage dumps being built in black neighborhoods, redlining, redistricting, like we're seeing all over the country right now. It's no longer a determining factor. The very same Civil Rights Act that they're fighting to overturn was used to destroy the Minority Business Development Act or agency, as well as any grant proposals from philanthropic or corporate venture capitalists. You can't use race. It's crazy. It is the ultimate Uno reverse card, where the very thing used to protect the racial diversity was used against it. And this is something that we're going to have to come to terms with. This is just an inkling of what happened in the last 2 years. Yes, it's only been 2 years. And the only solution that I have, the only one that will not involve you going to court, will not involve you facing any penalties or backlash, the thing that we've always done as African American men. Help is just not going to come. You're going to have to do it yourself. And to me, that was always the play anyway. We could never rely on help from outside. And now laws are being made so that you can't even help yourself. The only way you can get it at this point in time is to scrape together your pennies individually, keep us separated, and try to level your own playing field when the deck is so stacked against you. Let me know what you think about this comment or the content here, and I'll talk to you later. I'm sure it's going to ruffle some feathers, but nothing I said was a lie.